Hey, and welcome to a special bonus episode of the Golden Thread, and we are going to just review Christopher Nolan's new film, The Odyssey. We just got out of The Odyssey, went to see it down in New York City at the AMC in Lincoln Square, and it was just an awesome time. Went down with some friends. Here's some footage of us heading on down to see the film in Imax 70 millimeter, and it was a really powerful, compelling experience. I really encourage you to seek out the movie and see it on the largest screen possible. Really, truly epic experience, an epic film in the style of the sword and sandal epics of the 60s, of Days Long Gone and the golden age of Hollywood, but also at the same time mixed with very much the modern aesthetic that Nolan brings. I think one of the things that's so great about Christopher Nolan is that Christopher Nolan is able to speak both to the sort of the modern, the kind of dark shades of gray, ambiguous questions of ethics and cultural considerations, as well as he is also capable of telling stories in the timeless tradition, the ancient narratives, and the Odyssey is one of the great ancient narratives. And just in brief, I will say that Nolan does not disappoint. He does a wonderful job with this story. I would say that the film is tremendous, it's beautiful, it's powerful, it is epic in every sense of the word. The performances are great. The score by Ludwig Göransson is fabulous. And so just all in all, a tremendous experience. And so a real accolade once again for Christopher Nolan, who I really do believe is the greatest filmmaker of this generation and tackling one of the great stories of all time. And so highly recommend. Here are our immediate reactions coming up out of the theater.
Okay, so immediate reactions just right out of the theater, AMC Lincoln Center in New York City. What were everybody's reactions? Do you know?
Amazing.
Amazing?
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10?
10 out of 10, fantastic.
Epic. Amazing. Anything else to add?
I go see it again. Best third act ever.
Very good. All right, you've heard it there.
So as you can see, everyone very excited having just seen the film, and I will not give you any spoilers here. For those who haven't seen it yet, you should really experience it yourself as well as read the story. But I'll just say that he does a great job of combining combining and illustrating the sort of meeting of the fusion between, and the tension also between, the transcendent, the great, epic, heroic storytelling with the modern sort of questions about what does it mean to be a hero? Is there such a thing as a hero? Questions about faith, questions about the gods, right? And what do we believe? And about civilization. There's a lot of really very contemporary issues that are talked about. There was a lot of concern kind of going into this movie, and I'll speak to this just briefly here, but there was a lot of concern of people going into this movie just based on trailers alone and casting about, whether or not this version of the Odyssey was going to be, quote, woke, that Nolan, there were some that naysayers that said, oh, well, Nolan, he's 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 falling into some of these current day sort of culture war, pitfalls, you might say, and I am very pleased to say that is very much not the case. It's actually, I think, in a lot of ways, it's kind of illustrative of some of the I would say some of the unhealthiness of our culture today. That here we have a story, The Odyssey, which is one of the great transcendent stories of all time. One of the stories that, if there's ever a story that we should be able to all sit down around the fire and tell and hear the song sung again, it's this story. And yet what we're seeing in our culture today is, as soon as a story comes along claiming to be a story that can do that, the immediate reaction is not one necessarily of welcome and of invitation to gather around. Rather, it's a question of like, well, which side is the storyteller on? Are you with them, or are you with us? You know, are you on this side, or are you on that side? And of course, the answer is, if the story is true and the storyteller is true to his craft, the answer is that's just the wrong question. That's the wrong question to be asking, because that's what the story does. The story is that which brings all of us together. The truly great stories, or the stories that can do that, and this is one of those stories. And once again, Nolan does it. He is able to do both things. He is extremely true to the ancient narrative. So if there's anyone who has had concerns about, is this going to be faithful to Homer? Yes, it is. But at the same time, too, there's also the concern of like, yeah, but isn't this the same? Isn't this an ancient, several thousand-year-old story that no longer has bearing on the world today? And once again, there Nolan comes up with spades, because he is able to take this ancient narrative and translate it into images and in terms that we resonate with still today, and deal with actually some of these contemporary issues. There are things that do come up in terms of questions about our treatment of one another, and some of the current issues on the field today. Again, I don't want to say too much, but these things do get spoken to in subtle ways in the story, but in ways that doesn't twist the narrative to make it try to say something that it's not already saying. Again, the great stories are already saying all of the things that need to be said. It just takes a storyteller of finesse and subtlety to be able to find those threads within the narrative and be able to draw them out and rework them in a way that calls attention to those things that still resonate with our culture today. And so he's very much able to do that. Like, for example, I'll just give it as an example, the depiction of Cersei, who is the witch in the story, is beautifully done. It's somewhat different from the way it is in the original narrative. He does change some things. He plays with things, but in ways that I believe actually draw out the meaning that is already there, that is already there in the story. And he uses it as a way of talking about victimization, and particularly talking about the conflict between the male and the female, right? In this sort of, patristic kind of culture where women, were not necessarily free to live the way that they wanted to, and oftentimes were victims of violence and all of these kinds of things, and which is nothing new, right? Like, this is an ancient problem that has existed since the foundation of the world. And of course, it's just that we as modern people, we think, oh, we've transcended that. It's like, no, actually, we still struggle with the same things. And so he uses this as a way of talking about that Cersei represents essentially the kind of the frightened and vindictive and angry sort of side of the gender equation, that she is the vindictive, wounded, traumatized female who then from out of that she basically becomes this kind of monstrous character, and she is represented as using magic and is calling on the supernatural in a really dark way, but in a way that actually, for those who know the original story, she turns people into animals. But in the film, which is so wonderfully played with here, she describes it as essentially removing the disguises from men that reveal what their actual inner nature is, and that kind of the beast within. And this is played around a lot with in the story, but it takes Odysseus, it takes the king, to be able to build the bridge between the two, between this sort of vengeful harpy-esque kind of female who has become this sort of monster, and these men who, on the other hand, are more or less innocent, you could say, but but not really, because we also see throughout the story the things that are passions, that the male lust for power, or vengeance, or just even our own appetites, right? These kinds of animal appetites that they can drive us to all kinds of things that are harmful and self-destructive and destructive of the world. And so, and it takes a king to be able to build a bridge between those two, to be able to say, hey, maybe there's a way of making peace in this way. And yet at the same time, the character of Odysseus is wonderfully nuanced in the sense that he is the king, right? He is kingly. He's not another deconstructed hero that's just torn down and, like, oh, hey, look at this mockery of what a king is. Actually, the king is really genuinely the villain, and it's actually the oppressed who are raised up, and the king must be brought down, or something like that. It's not that story, right? It's not. Like, he is a true king. He is the true king. He is worthy of the throne, and he's shown to be worthy of the throne time and time again, but he is also at the same time flawed. And there's a line in the story that is something to the effect of, don't look for gods in men because you will be disappointed. And there is a through line of Odysseus essentially almost through his actions trying to make himself God, of putting himself in a place of responsibility as a leader over the lives of his men and the lives of his nation and even his family, that is almost godlike, and he wants to be godlike, and he wants to be that, but at the same time he can't be. He's flawed, right? Like, that is what makes him heroic, is the desire to be godlike, but it's also his sort of Achilles heel. It's that which cripples him because he's not able to live up to that, and none of us are able to live up to that. And so what do you do? What do you do with that? There's a wrestling through your own failure and your inability to rise to all of the possibilities and all of the things that are necessary for a leader, for a father, for a hero to be able to embody. And for a while, Odysseus basically is not able to do that. He's so crushed by his own failures, by his own mistakes and the ramifications of those mistakes, and his inability to see all ends, that he chooses to forget. He goes away and he forgets. And there's a wonderful use of the sort of the story of the lotus flowers, the flowers of forgetfulness that are in the story, and it's kind of combined and fused with the character of Calypso, who keeps him on the island for 7 years away from his family. But there's this sense of like him actually kind of not really wanting to go home, not being ready to go home, because he can't yet face his own weakness, his own mortality, and it takes him coming to that place. It's described as a leap of faith, of saying like, okay, I'm going to actually trust that I am not the master of my fate. I cannot carry the world on my shoulders, and to essentially stop running from the gods and fighting the gods, but rather to surrender himself to the sea, and by doing that, to allow the gods to both punish him and to carry him home. There is a wonderful degree of nuance and complexity when it comes to the whole struggle of man versus God, and the modern questions about faith. There's questions about the problem of suffering in the world. Why would the gods allow these things to happen? Are the gods merely capricious, and is the hand of Zeus merely harsh, or actually is there benevolence there? Is there something in the world that is good, that sets men on their course and guides them towards their destination? And we see that embodied in the character of Athena, who is, of course, sort of the patron saint, the patron goddess of Achilles, but who he, in some ways, betrays. And so he has to essentially... him going home is more than just going home. It's about him being reconciled to his family, to his wife, to his son, to his people, to himself, and to his God. And he's only able to go home once those things have been accomplished. And it's a powerful, powerful narrative. It's a powerful story. It's beautifully, as I say, beautifully shot, beautifully scored, beautifully acted. It is, in a lot of ways, it's the story that we need right right now. It is the story that our culture needs. There's a lot of undertones about the fall of civilization, and it is definitely talking about that and playing with it. It plays with some of the themes of there was concern about some of the casting choices when it comes to questions of race and questions of gender and things like that. And I am pleased to say that Nolan actually does address those things, but again, in very subtle ways and in ways that I think ring true to the story and are things that we actually do need to grapple with in the world today. That it is not enough simply to try to run from the struggles and the problems of the world. There's a line in there where Odysseus is talking with Penelope, and she is, she is asking him to always remember, and he's trying to promise that he'll always remember, but the question comes up of what if remembering makes it destroys your ability to find happiness? Like, what if you have to choose between remembering the things you don't want to remember about yourself and about the world and this sort of blissful forgetfulness? And the answer is that ultimately that to refuse to remember is to fail to come to grips with that which is real. Like, we have to come to grips with the real world that we live in. We cannot merely silo ourselves or cut ourselves off from the issues of today. What we need to do is we need to have the courage to take hold and grasp these things and engage with them, but also to draw upon the ancient wisdom of those who have come before us, that the struggles that we are facing today are nothing new, that they are the same classic struggles that man and woman have always engaged in throughout the world and across culture and across race and across gender and all of these things. And so this is the kind of story that gives us illumination for that. And I'm excited to watch the movie again. As with many of Nolan's films, perhaps all of Nolan's films, they only get deeper the more that you see them. And so again, this is just my initial reaction to it, but I'm excited to hear what your reaction is. And so make sure that you go out and check out the film. In terms of where it will fall in the ranking among Nolan's other 12 films, this is his 13th film. We in our previous video, check out the previous video where me and my brother sit down and we go through and we rank the films of Nolan from 1 all the way on down to 12, which was certainly a titanic task. But the question is, of course, where does the Odyssey fit? I want to just say, first of all, this is definitely A tier. It's definitely top shelf Nolan, 100%. I do not think it's at the very top for me. We'll have to see. And again, with time, who knows what can happen. My gut reaction, just having come out of the theater, is that it is in the top 5. I think it's top 5 Nolan. I would place it probably at number... I want to say, as of right now, I'm going to say it's number 4. It's number 4 as of right now. You can go back and check out the other video where I go through and you can see what the top 3 are. My brother and I both have the same top 3, so I would say for me this is number 4. I think for him, he said that it probably falls around there himself as well, and so we'll have to see how that ages with time. But it's a great film, it's a great achievement, and it's a great way of addressing some of the things that we have going on here in the world today. So I would encourage you to check out this film, and of course check out the source material as well. But congratulations to Christopher Nolan on yet another triumph, another masterpiece. And so thanks for tuning in for this short review, and go check out the movie.